1.
Welcome to the Templeton Advisory Committee meeting here, February 21st, 2024 at 6:30. The Templeton Advisory Committee regular business meeting is being broadcasted live on TCTV Channel 8 and TCTV YouTube channel. Responses will be made to comments on the TCTV YouTube channel as time permits. The agenda and the meeting material for this business meeting were posted to My Town Government no later than 48 hours prior to the scheduled meeting in accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts open meeting law. The chair reserves the right to add items or remove items from or change the order of the agenda. However, the agenda is posted in advance to give the committee and the public time to review the agenda items and to ensure the meeting runs within a lot of time. I call the meeting to order here at 6:30 here at Town Hall, February 21st, 2024. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, welcome everybody back. Welcome in the audience. I do need to welcome our newest member, Andrew Moser. Thank you for joining us and coming on board. I really do appreciate it. And obviously, the more eyes that can see, the better off we're going to be. So
Thank you very much.
Applaud your efforts. Moving right along. January 25, 2024 meeting minutes. Ever get a chance to look at those? Any questions, comments, any misspellings? Not that there's a lot, you know, just saying. I can entertain a motion for January 25th, 2024 meeting minutes. So moved. Okay,
Second.
excellent. Any discussion? I see none. Jeff?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Andrew?
I abstain.
And I vote yes as well. Any public comments? Echo. Excellent. No public comments. Action, the BvA for January 2024. Any questions on that? Did you guys get a chance to look at that? I mean, I'm sure you're gonna have the same questions that you did last month, which I have the answers for, which I think I sent out to everybody. And we'll go over those answers once we get to that section, okay? Any question on the BvA on January? Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, did you have any outline questions?
No, not at this time.
That's excellent. Okay, I could take a motion to accept the BvA January 2024 as is. For the record,
So move.
have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? See none. Jeff?
Yes.
No?
Yes.
Andrew?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Okay, we're gonna talk about some new business. Some of the new business request and receive electronic yearly summary of collected of interest law, conflict of interest law form from Town Clerk per Mass General Law. We'll drop off signed receipts on Mondays, blah, blah, blah. Jeff, do you have anything to add on that? That was one of your questions.
What's that now?
That was one of your questions. To request or receive yearly summary of conflict of interest laws. from the
Yeah,
town
that's
clerk.
just, it was, my concern is just to make sure that everyone gets that and turns the receipt into the town clerk.
Okay. And that's annual, correct?
That has to be done annually.
Annually, yeah. Jackie, is the Board of Selectmen office tracking that?
What was the question again?
The the conflict of interest law, documents that has to go to town clerk. Okay.
Yes,
I'm sure she has like an Excel spreadsheet or something.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry, I was taking.
and you're notifying what, because everybody's gonna be different.
Yeah.
Because when I take it, it's gonna be different from when Jeff took it. So we have to make sure it's all within the calendar.
When I got appointed back in November.
Yep.
I went online, I did my conflict of interest training.
Yep.
I got my receipt for the open meeting law.
Yep.
And I turned that into the town clerk when I got sworn in.
Right.
I didn't receive the summary of the law. So I waited a couple of days and I emailed the selectman's office. I got an email from the town clerk.
Okay.
She sent me the summary along with the receipt sheet that I signed and went down and turned in.
So
When I got it, it came from, and that was just back in November 2023.
Okay.
I got it from the town clerk.
We work on it together, the town clerk, and because we get
Excellent.
the committee interest forms and all of that.
I know the town administrator was supposed to keep, he was designated as the keeper of that stuff. And I believe because I've requested copies of it, of a spreadsheet, and it's when, every 2 years when the training is required to be done and who's done it and who's gotten this and that. So he was designated as the liaison for the conflict of interest law stuff for Mass General Law.
excellent.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
question, Cherokee.
yes, Jim.
Are all of us members, are we all up to date? As far as you know?
I know that he's did his recently. You just did yours. I think so. Yeah, as far as I know.
Excellent. All right, moving on. Discussion town meeting. Now, Jeff, I'm sorry, it wasn't really too much
Well,
specific.
I have
What we should.
I recommend that we bypass this agenda item for not being specific enough. Back in December, when I asked for that one thing, you had responded that it needed to be more
Right.
specific.
Did you send?
And- And I went and looked at December 28th, 2023, the Board of Selectmen were found violating the open meeting law
Oh,
with, their agenda item was 10 Pleasant Street, change order.
Right.
And the Attorney General said that wasn't specific enough. So just discussion town meeting, I mean, what do we discuss?
that's right. I didn't know. All right, well,
Yeah, I
we'll
just
line out that.
recommend we just skip over
We
that.
got it.
We don't need to get ourselves, I get in enough trouble on my own. We don't need, it's easy to avoid doing this, so.
Understood. All right, moving on. Discussion of tax rate and classification. Now, that's pretty specific. Did you have any discussion on that?
I kind of covered that the last time, but I just wanted to point out
Mm-hmm.
the fact that, and the Division of Local Services has put out, through cities and towns, their monthly newsletter, whatever you want to call it. They've
Mhm.
done two parts. Just pointing out that, the increases in valuations throughout the state, and they break a residential and open space, and then, commercial and industrial property.
Mhm.
And especially here in Templeton, a lot of residential homes sell. So the values increase. Commercial property, not so much, doesn't sell that often. And the tables and the records show, if you go back and look at the property records through the Board of Assessors website, I looked at a couple specific properties, one a residential, one was commercial property. And over like 5 years, the residence valuation, and I'm just making up the number because I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's like 200,000 5 years ago. Now it's 400,000.
Yep.
So their tax bill is going up. Where the commercial property that I looked at was increased about 40,000. Just because of the lack of, sales of commercial property.
Mm.
And the DLS has a table and chart, and you can find this on their webpage.
Right.
And if you sign up for cities and towns and all that other stuff, you can get this. And, to me, it comes down to the point where, and this has been brought up by at least one member of the Board of Assessors at the tax classification hearing, that the residential taxpayer is really footing the bill for the town. I know the idea is to keep a single tax rate, and, we don't want to hurt small business mom and pop, but it seems like it has the opposite effect. Even though many communities do that, maintain a single tax rate.
For both commercial and
But-
residential.
Right, they just have one tax rate, they don't split it.
Right. But there are
But-
some cities that do split.
Yeah, there are some towns and cities that do split it. And they split it different percentages,
Mhm.
but it's kind of like a double-edged sword. On one hand, you say, well, we don't want to hurt mom and pops and put a bigger burden on them,
Mhm.
but on the flip side of that, the residences are getting hammered because of the sales, because people were going west, and that's where we're at. And
Yes.
home sales, I mean, just look at what the tax rate raises now. $1 is about over $1 million, I think. And not too long ago, that was like 500,000.
Right.
So I just want people to understand that and realize maybe that's something to look at down the road, to consider when we have that hearing, that yearly hearing.
To
is-
break out the.
I understand it, the idea is you don't want to hurt the small businesses, but you're looking at the overall picture. Again, the residents are paying the price.
Right, I mean, we can recommend it.
Just the fact that people are moving here
Mhm.
and they're buying houses, and,
Oh, yeah,
they don't care what they pay them. I mean, they do, but they come out here and pay $500,000 for a house and back up, east of 495.
okay,
They're paying $1 million for something, or they're paying more in rent than they're paying for a mortgage on a $500,000 house out here, and they're actually getting a chunk of land.
Jeff, can you do me a favor? Can you do me a favor and look into, the increase of, what the tax rate, if it was different or changed between residential and
I
commercial?
will send the,
To see like if it's up
Yeah.
even a 5%.
I can send I'll forward the emails, the city and town thing that has these two specific months
Okay,
where they highlighted. And within that, they show tables where communities that split it. Communities with the highest increase in the tax rate, the lowest,
right,
the ones that split, the ones that don't. And it has a breakdown of all the cities and towns that have a single tax rate versus a split tax rate.
Mhm.
And the percentages of,
what the difference is,
increases.
what the difference of income would be. I
Yes.
got you. Yeah, if you could send that to me. Yes,
Just to clarify that on that too, Jeff, single family homes or residential homes, how you said they keep going up, 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 up. So we only get evaluated every 5 years by the state. In fact, Justice and I had a conversation with the DOR rep today, Ann Vision. And we can justify increasing the residential sales in the town because we have so many sales. So instead of hitting a residential every 5 years on the weekend, on the reval, we slowly increment it up, and we can, and the state approves it because we do have the sales to justify it. On the flip side, like you said, we're not having commercial properties sell in town.
right,
So you can't just jack the commercial properties up, because when we submit for our sales analysis to the state every year, they're gonna look and say, how do you justify you just hit your commercial properties this much? Because we don't have the sales. So what's gonna happen this year in the reval, year 5, your commercial properties are gonna really skyrocket. Because it's when they catch up to all these increments in the last 5 years of residential. So you'll see a big push in your commercial properties going up. And a lot of that's gonna be based off of income and expense reports that they've filed over the last couple of years. And then we'll have a sales analysis come in from Vision, and it'll check that all. And that's gonna push your commercial rates up too. So they eventually do. Is it fair that they don't get hit over that 5-year income rent? Maybe not, but we can't justify as the assessors and the board approving those because we have no way to do it. And if we did it, the state would just kick it back to us and say, no go, you can't prove these sales. Whereas now when they're going through their 5th year and we've got an income and expense reports and we're gonna have it analyzed, then it's gonna show that the commercials before. So,
But between the 5-year period where each year Because if you follow the tax rate, when the tax rate goes down, that's because valuations have gone up.
Mhm.
When the tax rate goes up, valuations are down, and it's just a game to raise X amount of dollars. That's,
Yeah.
to me, it's a Ponzi scheme, but it's,
That's
it's the
just-
state
yeah,
law, it's the
that
way it is.
how yeah.
So, but in between in that 5-year period, where each year you do valuations versus, based off of sales, and you get to set a tax rate, you could shift the burden
Yeah, you do it split
From-
rate.
the residents so hard and shift it over. And then, like you said, every 5 years now, that 5th year when you have to do a reval of the town, where things will shift big, then maybe that year you could go back. I just wanted to point this out to make people aware of the tax burden, and it's generally focused on, well, we're keeping a single tax rate so we don't hurt the real small businesses, but there's the flip side to that. And I know it's not a popular thing to do, but I just think it's worth looking at,
Okay,
for a split rate.
excellent. Thanks,
Mr.
Jeff.
Chairman,
Yes.
may, I don't, I think the discussion between residential, commercial, residential. My understanding is the fact of the matter is that something like 91% of the taxes we collect are residential.
Mhm.
Only 9% are commercial, and I don't, unless you get to 25-30% of your tax base being commercial, which I don't see happening in the near future. It's not gonna change. The residential property taxpayers are going to bear the burden.
That's what happens in small towns. With less, we don't have a lot of industry.
Right, but you can shift the burden.
Oh, you could,
You can
with-
shift the burden,
yeah.
but
9%.
I know it's not popular, and people,
Right.
like I said, people
Yeah.
think of the small.
I guess my
business,
point
but-
is you can't shift the burden
So,
that much.
Yeah.
yeah.
I understand. Yes,
I
Justin.
was just gonna say, even when you do a split tax rate, there's only certain percentages you can go up. So for example, the max, and it depends on the values, you can only go up to 150% of your commercial, industrial, and personal property, or you can go, it depends on which lever swings either way, but you have to tax as much as 65% of your burden has to go to your residential.
Right.
And that's based off of, we have 92% residential, and you only have less than 10% commercial, industrial, and personal property. So you're talking about 150% of less than 10, and you're talking about, about 65% of the 92. So just keep that in mind, that's, you have to stay within those parameters if you were to make that change.
Well, if anything, we would do a recommendation if that was something that we would look into, but I mean, I want to look further into it, Jeff. If you could send me that stuff, that'll be great.
I will.
Thank you, sir. Since you guys were talking, great, we can discuss more about this is more educational, just so people are aware at home. Because obviously we do look at the budget for actuals, and we do notice that the assessor's office, the dollars keeps climbing. Where are you at now? 800,000, I think, 700?
So, all right, I'll step up to the.
Sure, please do.
Yeah.
Last time I checked it, what was it? I think it was like 700,000. It was over 500,000. I know that.
So just to clarify, what you're talking about is the overlay account. Is that
Yes.
what you're referencing?
That is
Okay.
what it is. Yep.
So before we begin talking, I do have a couple of pieces of information for the advisory committee, just that.
Okay.
you have some-
I'll make sure you get a copy, Jackie.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thank you. Yep. That's what I thought it was.
So what you have, what I just passed out is a informational guideline release. It's a regulation from the Department of Revenue talking about what overlay and overlay surplus are, as well as a copy of our overlay account sheet that we sent to the Department of Revenue, the overlay one
Right.
worksheet that we did for the current fiscal year of 2024. So just to explain, when you say that it's the assessor's accounts. Overlay is not like a normal account that we budget for.
Mhm.
It's not like a personnel account. It's not like any type of special expense that you would normally see. The assessors normally don't have access to it because that's not normally, that's not how that account works in general. What overlay is it's the amount to cover your abatements, your exemptions, and your uncollectibles. What the town does and what is required under Mass General Law is that a certain amount is appropriated, well, not appropriated, is raised on the tax rate. It doesn't go to town meeting to cover those because under Mass General Law, people who apply for exemptions or people who are granted abatements has to come from somewhere. To understand why under Mass General Law, we set a tax rate, people have to pay their bills, but collections are not 100%. Mass General Law assumes that you will collect 100% of your taxes when you set a tax rate.
And what are we around? 98%, I think, right?
I would have to, I don't know
We're
what,
about 98.
It's about that.
yeah, for what the collector, yeah.
That's what I saw.
When it's been,
And just to note, when you say it's 98% now, that's because you have a very active collector treasurer. So the reason why a lot of this balance is in this account is because of over the years, we had a lot of potential liabilities on the town's books. Just to throw it out there, the American tissue properties.
Yes.
Over millions of dollars. And in order to cover that, we had to have that extra money sitting in overlay, because if something ever happened and we had to write all that stuff off, it's gonna hit this account and it's gonna go out.
I see.
So because the collector treasurer over the last 2 or 3 years, you've seen that we haven't had as much potential liability on the bottom line figure because she is forcing everything into tax title. So when she moves everything off the books to tax title, that takes off your potential liability. So you're looking at that now and saying, whoa, they have a cash cow of like $800,000, which technically at the end of the year, there may be extra money in there only because of, like I said, we're active in pushing everything over tax title and going after these properties now to get our debt back on, back into the books.
So this account will just keep growing and growing and growing, correct?
No. I mean, every year you gotta raise enough each year to cover your tax rates liability. Like this year, we raised on line 7, it says $108,000. It's covering our exemptions, abatements and everything.
Right.
And Justin and I were talking just earlier, and so far to date, we've had 104,000 for this year that we've given out. So we're getting close to hitting that this year, and that's not covering any of the potential liability that we also might have on the books. So, I mean, we used to, for a couple of years, they did put a lot and the board approved it to put like 250, 300,000. And you have the last couple of years, you've seen they haven't done that. I mean, last year, what was it, 106,000, 109, or those were abatements granted, but they were in the habit of putting more money in there. And now they're looking at it saying, it'll probably come down a little, but depending what your liability is on your books too, that's why it's holding there.
I got you. You have any questions?
I do have a question
Yeah,
on
go ahead.
this. And I know the Muni Modernization Act kind of changed it, said they were gonna have one fund and do away with it, but I believe we still maintain a surplus, an overlay surplus fund.
This is all one account.
Okay, so were they,
Yeah, so everything, it used to be more spread out and you'd have each year, and when we did our abatements, you draw down from the oldest accounts. Now it's just one balance. At the end of the day, that's how much you have.
okay, because I know when the law first changed, I think we still kept the overlay
The books looking like
and
that.
then had the surplus separated out. So what does the assessors do when you have a sum of money more than what you need or what you anticipate you need?
So when they have a surplus. So what happens is you can't do anything to the surplus in the overlay account until justice processes all the abatements and exemptions.
Mhm.
People have up until April 1st to file for exemptions. So then that goes to the board meeting in April, and sometimes if they don't get to that, they'll approve it in May. So really, you're not looking at the Board of Assessors even entertaining a thought of looking at excess overlay till the middle or end of May or beginning of June. It has to be voted for by the board before the end of June. And once, like, say the board looks at this, we're just throwing a figure out there, say they say, okay, we'll give the town $100,000 in excess overlay.
Right.
They'll vote for that, but then that vote has to go to town meeting floor. Town meeting floor then is the authority that says, yes, we'll take the excess overlay, and then they actually can vote where they want it to go.
Right.
You know, it can't be earmarked. You can't go to town meeting and say, we want this overlay to go to this extra vehicle. The town meeting floor can go in and say, we're approving you to have $100,000 in excess overlay, and we'd like to see it go towards this. So they're your determining factor. So the Board of Assessors are the only people that can touch that account and move the excess out. And then again, then after that, and once they vote for it, it has to go to a town meeting floor vote to actually act upon how it's done.
Mm.
And if town meeting doesn't beat it before the end of, I want to say the end of June, then you have to wait and it gets certified into free cash the next year, and then it goes into general fund, and then you can use it anyway.
I understand.
Did you follow me?
No, it's very good, a very good explanation
Yes.
on that and clarifies that. So if people look at a budget book and they see, well, our overlay surplus is a safety valve, it's really
It's
not.
not.
It's not.
No, and the board is very, they're proactive, and if there's money in there, in past, Carter's come to me and said, hey, will you board give us 50,000? And after we talk to Cheryl and you find out what's on the debt book and everything like that, because you can't go past that debt. So also, tax bills are due May 1st. And Cheryl will wait a couple weeks just to make sure the stragglers and everything in, and then she'll tell you the potential liability for that year. And then you kind of have to figure it out, and that's when we'll go back to the board, or justice will go back to the board and say, hey, you know, they really like some of the excess overlay. This is how much is in there. And then they'll vote to do it.
I'm tracking. You-
Yep.
That is all the job of the elected Board of Assessors,
Yeah.
that fund.
Yeah.
I think that's just an important thing to get put out there,
Yep.
so people.
And
Cause I
like I
think
say, yeah, it's healthy because
That's
when
why,
you go to town meeting, these are things that you need to know, that are important.
and this is
So
the
when you
reason
vote-
why I
has to
invited
vote
them.
on something.
yeah, and it is, it's a healthy count, like I say, only because in the last couple of years, your collector treasurer has been very active in tax title. And once that gets pushed into tax title, that takes all that potential liability off the overlay books.
Which is
So
great.
that's why it's looking like more and more money.
Excellent. Yeah, what you got?
Is American Tissue still the single largest liability?
Yes, they're still the biggest ones on the books.
And
You
what,
moved some to tax title and some hasn't gone. So. you can probably do more on how much.
so a large part of the $802,000 is, that's covering the liability of American Tissue.
Yeah, well, if you look,
Because
actually, our potential liability right now is $212,000. That's what's out on the books. A lot of American Tissue, a lot of the other ones, like, just throw some names like Wood Skills out there, it's abandoned property.
Yep.
That kind of stuff is all getting moved to tax sale, so that's why it's pulled this figure down so low. So this actually could be regular, your neighbor, Joe, part of his liability that he's back on his taxes, he has to pay them.
Oh, okay. All right. Any other questions?
I have a couple.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. How often is money moved out of this overlay account?
In terms of
town.
like surplus or in terms, ever since I've worked here, I haven't seen an overlay surplus vote. It depends on. It's probably been a few years.
It's been a couple of us before you were on the board.
Yeah,
When Carter was here, I think they moved it twice. They moved like 50,000 one year, maybe, and 25,000. Because he had actually came and said, hey, would you guys entertain it? It's like, I'll throw it at them, we'll get the figures, and they had no issue doing it.
Okay.
So it's been a few years.
I think that was 2017.
Yeah, so it has been a few years.
It seems like well, let me take a step back. Is there a formula for how much you guys try to keep in this account?
in terms, so looking at the sheet, we're supposed to raise what what our average is from the past 5 years. So if you look at this sheet, for example, our past 5-year average was 108. That's what we usually give out in exemptions. We're going into a revaluation year this year. If you look at FY 2020s, you'll notice that that number went up. Sometimes that does happen during a revaluation year. So typically you're looking at about for a healthy account that you're not deficit spending into in a year, you want probably around 150,000 in that for fiscal year. In the past, if you actually were to go back all the way probably to fiscal year 2017, if I look at it, this account often deficit spent because the town did not have any reserves in it. The town then made the choice and the Board of Assessors agreed to put more into that over the past couple of fiscal years. If you were to look, over 200,000 was put in on some years.
Mhm.
Moving forward, should that be the case? Not sure, but overall 150,000 per year is usually a good number. You'll have a little bit potentially in it at the end of the year because you don't know what's going to come in for abatements and exemptions each year. Because again, every person who applies for an exemption is eligible and is awarded that amount if they are, approved. And then any abatements, we have to cover that liability.
Right.
So
Wouldn't it be healthy to say, like, I mean, I know you're talking the 108, I can see that. Do you think it would be healthy to be looking ahead, saying, okay, $500,000 should always stay in this overlay account? Anything over over $500,000, that's something that you can discuss with your board for excess overlay?
yeah, there's a calculation for excess overlay. It
Mhm.
involves what the potential future liabilities are, and
Right.
like we won't know that until the end. Talking with the treasurer, I know that, the treasurer collector, I know that there's a lot of people right now that are, struggling to pay their bills, so that, that might be a little bit more
Mhm.
higher than in previous years. We won't know until after May 1st.
Right.
In terms of that, and while Luann did touch upon about American Tissue does have tax titles that are attached to those accounts. But tax titles, depending on the situation, can become liabilities, even though they're not reflected on the sheet. So at any point in time, if something were to happen and we had to abate out of those, even though they're not reflected, because the 212,000 that you're seeing on line 12, that is just from people not paying their bills during that last fiscal year, because the treasurer, as Luann had mentioned, she moves and puts those all into tax title. Once those go into tax title, those don't reflect on the next year's potential liabilities because they're considered secured.
Okay.
But tax titles can potentially become a liability depending on when you move to foreclose, or if something's wrong with the tax title, that can come back. I know that's always been a question with American Tissue, so that's something that we have to watch. So American Tissue is above and beyond that number that you see at the bottom there.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
So just to bring it back to the sheet here, the current balance in the account, 910,966.
So the overlay accounts,
Line three.
so that would have been the amount available at the setting of the tax rate.
Okay.
That's been spent down or expended down because of abatements and exemptions that have happened this year.
So the 108,540 is what was projected for it. And you said to be prudent on the 50-year reval, it might be on the upper bound of some of these past numbers that you would need for
Yeah.
abatements and exemptions. Okay. So, but that 910 less the 108 is how you get to 802. And then we have receivables as of 6/30/2023 at 212. So that would roughly mean that there's about $590,000 afterwards that's unallocated and sort of saved for future needs or. Okay. And is that a number that you guys are comfortable with?
That's a good balance.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
I mean,
compared to where it was in 16.
well, and that's the thing, I mean, that's got some money in there, the
It's just-
thing is, and the only other thing, we're talking potential liability as far as taxes being paid and such, we're also talking appellate tax board cases. Fortunately, we've been very good when we've gone to appellate tax board, and this year we've gone not only there, they've taken us right to Supreme or Superior Court.
Right.
And we still won the case, so that didn't hit this. A lot of times Verizon will go and sue all the cities and town in Massachusetts, and you have pending cases. That was a case a few years ago, so we have to keep money in that too, that something might happen down the line. you know, any of the cable companies that are taking lawsuits against the whole towns. I mean, you're talking 351 city and towns, and we all go to court and fight for it. So that's also like potential liabilities for us too. So it's not just tax revenue, it's also court cases going, which fortunately we don't have any pending in our office right now. So that's good.
Thank you.
Mr.
Yes,
Chairperson,
yeah.
I just,
All right, one more question.
I just hate to keep coming back to American Tissue, but it seems, in looking at the numbers, am I right or wrong? Is American Tissue really driving a lot of these numbers?
Not in the overlay.
No.
No.
Okay,
I mean, they're in tax title and could they ultimately drive the numbers in overlay, but not this number right now.
okay,
Yeah, it's not reflected now because it's in tax types.
thank you.
All right, great. Thank you very much for the two of you, Luann, Justice. I really do appreciate the education. It was really informative for all of us, and I hope the viewers as well, so they understand what the overlay, because dealing with municipal financing is hard enough as it is with, you know, with the one document coming out, the budget from the governor, and it trickles all the way down to us, and how the assessors, how the tax collectors, I mean, how it all comes together, and whew, you guys do great work. We do really appreciate everything you do, and all you do, Luann, and all you have done. I mean, again, I can't applaud your efforts enough.
And no, investors doing a great job, and that's what they just have me to help consult with them and with the board, so.
Keep up the great work. Because it does mean a lot to me. All right. Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Action on the free cash breakdown monthly report posted by the AC Town website. Jeff, we talked about this. Can you briefly go over that again? Because I wanted to make sure I get it right. Just so
Yes,
people understand.
If anyone goes on the Division of Local Services website, and you can see free cash. And this past year, you know, it was only 674,000 or so. And it kind of shows what the deductions, you start out with a number, a
Right.
dollar figure, and then real estate tax is not collected because the state law allows you to put 100%, even though you know you're not going to collect them.
Yeah, we keep.
But
That's
as far as you look at that number, that's 674,000, or the number that you start with, 1.4 million, whatever it is.
Right.
Where does that money come from? And it comes from leftover expenses,
Mhm.
money that's appropriated and not spent, or revenue comes in higher or unexpected.
Mhm.
And other things. But I would like to see, rather than go through the BvA at the end of the year and go, "Oh, I got all this left over,
Okay.
and, we got this money, and where's the revenue?" If there's a spreadsheet that could be created that would break down where that 674,000 came from. Easy to look at, easy for residents to understand that, okay, you have this free cash. It's a undesignated fund balance.
Right.
Okay.
So what
So
comes back?
Where did that money come from?
Okay.
Because like I said, the DLS has a worksheet and you look at it, but it doesn't break down. It breaks down what they subtract from the initial number.
Right. But how did you get to the initial?
But where do you get that?
Gotcha.
You start with $1.5 million and you end up net 674.
Right.
And if you look at the bottom, there's a big number, usually 400 and something thousand, but what is that? Where does that come
All
from?
right. Can you do me a favor, Jeff? Can you, just at your leisure time, I know you're at your computer at night, can you just draft up an idea of
Yeah.
what exactly you're looking for?
Uh-huh.
That way there's something that we can all look at to say, okay, that's a great idea. Maybe we should advise the select board, say, hey, this might be something that, the people could actually see. You can post on your website and people can read it and understand it.
It's a very simple thing because, free cash, or it's not free money. It's
Nope.
tax dollars that was not spent or more taken in than what you either
Right.
estimated you would take in, or you got some settlement or, something like that.
Excellent.
Well,
Well, if you can work on that for the next meeting.
I can do that.
Thank you, Jeff.
Uh,
Andrew, you have any questions on that?
No.
I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
Yes.
And I think that sums it up very easy. Action recommended to increase snow and ice, account for FY 25. The action that's being taken right now is they are actively, putting more dollars into that account. How much more, I don't know, but we will find out on March 18th, I believe. We have our round meeting here, with all the directorates, during the budget hearings. But they are increasing that snow and ice, huh? 16?
March 16th.
March 16th, sorry, March 16th. March 16th. So just keep that in mind once we start going through that.
That's certainly been a sore point.
It's gonna be,
Among among many members, past and present.
right, so people understand, government spending is not like your checkbook at home. It's not like, it's not like that. It's weird. People don't understand how weird it is. Like, it's like, well, how do you're spending all this money? I'm like, well, that's what you're supposed to for services that are being provided to the community. And I can tell you this, since 2016, we've had a balanced budget. Am I right? Since 2016, we've had a balanced budget. Have things been shifted, moved, utilizing free cash to buy things, not to offset the budget, but to buy capital assets? Absolutely, we sure did. But as far as the budget's concerned, since 2016, it's been funded. There's been no issues. Audits have been done since 2016 till present that have been very, very successful. Mild to moderate, management sheets that were presented based on what Roselli had found, but one or two or three, four things, nothing, not like 37 things like in 2016. So people, the budgets will be balanced. Yes.
I don't have it completed yet, but I've been tracking, and we certainly don't use it like it had been used up until 2012. In 2012, the use actually, it went down, for a few reasons. But we still are using free cash to balance the budget or supplement the general fund budget. It's not in the past where there would be a couple articles at town meeting where you would take $100,000 of surplus revenue from the operation of the light department
Right.
and use it for the assessors to, set the tax rate. In other words, you gotta, just making up a number here,
Okay.
you got a $10 million operating budget that town
Yeah.
meeting voted to spend. So you got 100,000 coming from the light department. So now you only need to raise 10,900,000 from taxation. And
Okay.
the other thing was to take 100% of free cash and do the same thing, have an article, $600,000 of free cash used by the assessors to assist in setting the tax rate. In other words, you take the light surplus, that state aid, the local receipts, you add it up. And making up a number here, folks, that's $2 million. So now we got to raise $8 million from taxation.
Right.
We're not doing that anymore, but the town has still, since 17 or 8, fiscal 18 for sure. From fiscal 18 till now, we have used free cash to either balance the budget or supplement the general fund budget to cover
What?
things that were spent that we either didn't plan on, or again, you budget on 100% collection of real estate taxes and you only collected 98%. You got records going back 5, 8, 10 years. That's all you're collecting is 98%.
Well, I'm gonna double check that, because I know the only time that we spend free cash to offset, and again, I do apologize, I don't want to misspeak here.
I mean, we've done it for legal expenses, we've done it for late bills, we've done it for a tax title. It's been done through special articles.
Yes.
But it's covering general operating expenses. We're not using 100% of it like we did in the past.
Right.
So we've gotten better in that instance. But as was in the second financial review of the town of March of 2021, the DOR was still making the point that the town is continuing to use free cash to supplement the budget, and we need to get away from that. We need to just stop.
And supplement the budget, meaning like snow and ice deficit, that you took free cash to
Like I
supplement
said,
that.
it's been used for late bills,
Gotcha.
it's been used for
You're right.
different
You're
things,
right.
but that are general fund items. Again,
gotcha.
we're not using 100% of it to supplement, to budget or fund the town, operating of the town, but we are still, we're just kind of addicted to, and we just, it's hard to get off of it. Like I said, I haven't finished tracking the total amounts per fiscal year, but it's not as bad as it was, but we're still using it nickel and dime mode, but we're still doing it.
But we're not, it's not in a bad way.
The state has, recommended again, develop somewhere to get off of that.
Understood. Go ahead, Andrew.
Just as a quick follow-up, is your concern, Jeff, more that we're using money out of free cash to sort of pay back bills from the prior year rather than paying it forward? Or is it concern that it's necessary due to improper budgeting, or both? Or, I kind of think it sounds like part of it is you're taking this month's income to pay last month's credit card spending rather than put it aside in the account for next month.
Some of it is you spend more than what you've, appropriated, because like legal expense, you think you're gonna spend 70 grand
Right.
and you try to control that. But if well, I gotta ask this question, then it adds up quick. And before you know it, we need an extra 5, we need an extra 10 for this. We need this for evaluation. We need this for tax title.
We
We
haven't
need
done
this
that.
for expense. We need this for that. It's kind of a mix of both.
Okay.
You're paying a late bill or unexpected bill, or you're just paying something where that department's gonna, run out unless you throw some free cash in there.
Yep.
It's,
Those both.
it might be a necessary evil sometimes, but again, it's something that should be worked on, I think, to eliminate that 100%.
I'm not gonna disagree with you.
Like, we're not as bad as the town was before.
If I may,
Yes.
Mr. Caplis, the state cut the local aid in 2008 by 15%. And they increased it 1.5% over the next 10 years, so that by 2019, it was what it was in 2008.
Right.
And if you look at the shortfall of where the state aid should be, versus where it is now, that gap is almost equal to the amount of, free cash that's being spent. There's a very high correlation between those two numbers.
Right.
And I agree with Mr. Bennett is that it's a problem, but I don't see us getting out of that problem, until the state, the local state aid is at an amount equal to what it was in 2008 and adjusted for inflation since that time. That's probably a number that's about $1.5 million more
Right.
than what it is.
All right, excellent. All right, any, we, kick that can down the road. TCTV. Come on up, what do you, I saw your cable TV subscriber equity.
Yes.
Indulge,
So as you may know,
Mr. Castle.
how are you, sir?
Good to see you.
Good to see everybody here. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you.
As you may know, we're facing somewhat of a funding crisis.
Can you just like introduce us, because Andrew doesn't
Oh,
really know you.
I'm Steve Castle. I'm the director of TCTV, our local TV station that brings you this meeting live and later on recorded. And we do many other things for the town as well,
Sure do.
with a lot of programming on our TV channel. We also run Montechusett TV, a regional website, that we're starting because we cannot make enough money on TCTV. And we're also starting a digital lab in concert, we hope, with Wachusett Business Incubator and Gardner to provide a feeder system, not only for us, but for other media entities,
Mhm.
for townspeople. And we're attracting a lot of good, young, eager people.
Excellent.
So there's a lot there. And we're actually, when you build media entities, you're building economic development. And that's really what we can do for Templeton. So we're facing a funding crisis because we're funded almost entirely by cable TV subscriber fees. And the cable TV subscribers are dropping off at an alarming rate, which shouldn't surprise anybody. We've lost in the last 4 years approximately 25, 50, 100, and 200. That's an exponential drop. We have 2 years left at that pace. And we're going to go through all of our budget and our capital that's set aside in an enterprise retained earnings fund, which if you haven't studied, I'm sure you will. We're going to go through all of that this
What's your
year.
retained earnings now, Steve? What was the last capture you had?
Do you want it for 24, 25?
24, 25.
So 24, right now we have 74,000 in that, and we keep it in our 5,700 account
Right.
as our capital. So that's kind of like our savings account.
Okay.
We're going to go through all of that
Yeah, that's
this year. We're going to take 40,000 probably for personnel and services out of there. And we have a website to develop as well. We've budgeted 20,000 for that. And we need money to buy computers and cameras and things like that as well. So that means no retained earnings will roll over for FY 26.
Are you still programmed to assist the Scout Hall with the furniture stuff?
Oh, yeah.
We're going to help with that.
Yeah.
So some of that 74,000 would go to that as well? Or?
Yes, well, we have
I'm just
10,000 budgeted this year for FY 24 and 30,000 for FY 25.
That's all I did there. Okay.
And
So-
we're looking at as much used and free furniture as we can find.
I got it.
We have a library attic that we're gonna raid for a
Excellent.
lot of the shelving and stuff.
So you preparing to do an article for the town meeting?
Yes, so, what's happening is the cable subscribers are paying our bills exclusively. And right now it's almost down to 50-50 between cable TV households and non-cable TV households. We have no way of charging the people who don't have cable TV, and yet we put everything on YouTube. So everyone else in town can get it for free, and the cable TV subscribers are paying for it. So we're asking that gap be addressed. And it just so happens that that's about the amount of money we need to make the budget work. So I don't backwards engineer these things. I come up with this and I look to my sons who are both math majors and I say, how do the numbers work out? And they say, it's probably right, Dad. You're in the ballpark.
What was the number? What was the number you're looking at?
110 for this year, for FY 25 that we would need. So anyways, we're going to go through FY 25 with our retained earnings as well, the way we're going right now. And I'm not taking my foot off the brake because we have momentum and we're doing a lot for this community. We can do so much more. It's only going to cost $100,000 a year to get us through the next 5 years. And, we have a 5-year plan to do that. And I think, there are efforts throughout the country to try to find ways to make local media work. And we have a good chance of being one of those organizations that find out how to do it with all the tools that we're putting at our disposal, with a regional website that has an infinite ceiling. We do e-commerce on that website. Who knows where it's going to go?
Okay.
A digital lab that can become workforce development and an economic development tool for the town.
Excellent.
Mr.
Yes.
Caplis, I have a statement and a question.
Sure.
Yes, the statement is, I read the draft article and I think what it really needs is a specific dollar amount. And it's missing that specific dollar amount, and I think if it was to be reviewed by town council, it would probably be returned or come back because of a lack of a specific dollar amount.
I know the select board feels that something should be done and has asked the town administrator to check with the town council on how we can fund it.
Is this the language of the proposed article?
That was the language that we submitted for the select board. However, they may have issues with it. And if you feel it needs a specific number,
I do.
I would not object to you putting forth that.
Yeah, I have a motion, Mr. Chair, that we recommend to the select board, that a warrant article be placed for the annual town meeting, in the amount of $125,000.
Okay.
That's the figure I arrived at, looking at the paperwork that you submitted. And allowing, a little bit extra, usually when you see, it looks to me like the actual deficit's 110,000. And then if you add, 10% or so to that, you get to 125,000.
Mhm.
I think that if there is a specific amount on the town meeting floor, that it should be that amount. I do-
Because,
I do.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you're gonna go ask for a significant sum of money, you don't want to go small trying to say, well, we'll just ask for this to get it passed, and then 6 months later, you got to go back and ask for more. If you,
Right,
my
right.
think is, looking at the history of overrides, when you make the case to town meeting that you need an override, if you give them the amount that you believe that you need, you make a better case than if you go, well, we might need 125, but I don't know if we're gonna get that. So we'll go with, we think maybe we can get slide by with 80. And then you have to turn around and come back and ask for, people tend to say, well, why don't you ask for what you need when you ask the first time? And we are allowed to do this. It's an enterprise fund, but Mass General Law on enterprise funds is you create an enterprise fund and then see if the income, the revenue that
Right.
fund will raise, and if it fully funds it, that's good. If they raise more than they actually need, then they have a reserve. It's their retained earnings, which is similar to free cash from the general fund. If their income does not
We have to
fully
supplement.
pay for it, then town meeting is allowed to appropriate money to help out that enterprise
That's
fund. And if, in the end, if you find out that the enterprise fund is not gonna work and it needs to be funded just from a general fund standpoint, or a different funding area, then you can, town meeting can abolish their vote that created the enterprise fund and then just have like a departmental budget.
Right.
This is important not only to just keep this little department afloat here in Templeton, but the state legislature has extended all these hybrid meetings and things so forth till at least March 2025. I know they're talking about making them permanent.
Mhm.
There's also some legislators that are trying to get a bill passed that would sort of do like they did with the no cost upfront school meal stuff, to put through a state budget item to fund these, because there's a lot of small communities, especially out this way, that when they were doing all the Zoom meetings and stuff, they were like, anybody in town work in the IT field or computer science, and can you help us? And that's what was done. So if the state is gonna make this things permanent, where you can have all these remote and hybrid meetings and stuff, then you're gonna have to have the infrastructure, so to speak, the mechanism to make this work. And I think Templeton, we've had a leg up on this for a number of years. I would say like a decade we've been recording meetings, and it's been getting better. And now they're on YouTube. You don't have to go down and get the CD anymore. You can just go online, and that's a double-edged sword too. But
Right.
That's why I think this is an important thing to get in front of town meeting and get it funded. And let them know that this is gonna have to be a long-term thing, because it is a big benefit to the town. I know there's a lot of people who, now I can watch a meeting, I can sit at home, just me personally, I can watch 2 meetings at a time. I'm gonna go to this meeting, and I can't make this one, so now I can do 2.
All right, Jeff.
Well,
I understand. We're gonna
It's,
move on. So we
and
have
I
a
think,
motion on the floor.
Noah's
this-
point
this is
of
written.
figure is a good way to go.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Yes,
I have a
second,
motion and a second. Do you have any discussion? Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions for Mr. Castle.
Certainly.
Yeah.
So, couple of things. One, you project in 2 years by 2025 that you'll have no cable subscribers in town?
If you follow column B on that chart, you'll see the decline from 2019, or actually 2018, 25,
year.
50, about 100, 200. And if we keep going exponentially like that, it'd be 400 this year, 800 next year, and then we're done.
Do you think it's likely that there'll be nobody in town with cable?
No, I think it'll plateau somewhere, but I think we're at an inflection point, because if I extended this cable and this table, I actually did to project it out, you would have the cable subscribers would have astronomical costs. So something's got to give, and it's probably going to be our revenues.
Okay, in your spreadsheet that you created, by the way, I feel for you, this has had an impact on your budget. I can tell it's probably not very pleasant. When you come up with the cable revenue and the cost per subscriber, and then you have a column uncharged, basically the idea for the people who are watching and can't see what we're looking at is that there's people who don't have cable who aren't paying into your revenues that go into TCTV. In this, there's an assumption that when we add together those who have cable and all the households who don't have cable, that everyone should be paying. So like 100% of the households in Templeton would be somehow paying, right? Is there ever been a point at which 100% of the town
Oh,
residents
no.
had cable?
I'm sure there hasn't been. I don't know another way to figure it.
Yeah.
And my main concern, and I think my duty and obligation to represent the cable subscribers, is they're unfairly paying the bills. If I could put a paywall on YouTube, I would. I can't, and you know what? It's not gonna do much, because you might get 100 people to pay it. We can start membership fees too once we get going with our new budget and getting to Scout Hall and so forth. You're going to be lucky to get, I won't say lucky. You'll be good if you get 100. You'll do great if you get 200 out of 1,700. You'll be phenomenal if you get 500.
Right.
You know,
So-
we want to get 500, but we're going to have to work up to it.
So my concern is looking at it that now that would, if we allocate, I think there was a motion for 125,000, even if you get 100,000 cable revenue or 80,000, that's going to be like almost 50% more than you guys have ever had ever. And it seems like a big step up, which I'm sure you could use the money. But it seems like there'll be a lot of people paying a lot of extra, including town residents who have cable. And now they're also going to be having their taxes go to pay twice, right? Where there's an equity discussion that you had in your.
It's a conundrum.
Yeah.
For certain, but that's also why myself and the cable committee didn't want to advocate for an override for it, because then the cable customers are paying twice. At least this way, the town is providing the reparations for this and perhaps subsidizing the people who aren't paying.
And so as part of this, would the revenue that is received from Comcast go as town revenue?
I don't know how to answer that precisely. It comes in, the revenue we get from Comcast comes in as a check to the town of Templeton, because the select board is the franchising authority. However, there are state regulations, and why we're in an enterprise account is so that money won't be used for things like filling potholes. So
I understand
we
that. And
try
at the
to
same time, if
siphon it
we're,
into there.
sorry to interrupt you, if
That's
we're
okay.
going to have as a town outlay, though, that we're going to be paying the budget of TCTV, all the revenue that comes in from cable goes to you, but then all the money that comes from the town goes to you, right? And if we did 125,000, for instance, I mean, 2020, the cable revenue was 126, 21 was 123, 22 was 121. So if the money's still coming in from the cable company, assuming that it's not zero in 2 years, it seems like there may be a double sort of payment for this. So that would be my concern. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Just one last comment on the finances, and actually it's,
Make it.
I like that the table and stuff that you put out there, because that is in effect long-term financial forecasting, which, and it's, costing out of a service as well, which, is lacking a little bit in the town. And I hate to push for another fee or another tax or anything, but we have revenue sources that we could dedicate to this, such as new growth, which has been a recommendation for DOR to take, because that's one-time money each year, and you can dedicate that to a certain thing.
Mhm.
There is also, and in the legislature, for a local option, like you can increase, towns can go past the 0.75. We can increase that meals tax thing. If you raise whatever amount of revenue that would raise, if it went town meeting and if it passed, a possible, a funding source for cable TV. I mean,
I got you.
it's a valuable thing, and I think you just should look, not that I'm a proponent of, increasing the fees and taxes on people, but we've got to look at all the options for this, because it's an important thing that the residents like and want.
Excellent. I have a
The
motion.
reason why I brought
Yeah.
the motion was, I think Mr. Castle is running out of time.
Okay.
And
I
that's
got you.
why I like to see it on the.
And
All right, I
it's-
got a motion, and a second. Any other discussion? Okay. I see none. Jeff?
Yes,
No, how do you vote?
Yes.
Andrew?
No.
And I vote yes as well.
that's a
Do me a favor,
good.
can you just write that, just send an email with the recommendation? And then what I'll do is I'll get it to the select board.
On the form of a letter.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Thank
and your
you.
support.
I
If
appreciate
you
it.
have any questions, feel free. Contact me.
Okay, quickly, I'm gonna go over the questions and the answers. We sent the questions to the town administrator's office and the concerning the budget versus actual. There was a few questions, so I'm gonna go through these quickly if you don't mind. The Stone Bridge project, obviously it's on hold. The question was brought forward by us on November 15th. The article was rejected by the people. Article 22 was rejected. Defeated November 15th at 8:29 PM about Stone Bridge. One of two need to happen before the project can be approved. The town either discontinues the bridge portion of Stone Bridge Road to allow recreational activities or get sufficient funds to do the bridge to the standard of today. Perhaps we can bring another question to the annual town meeting. So basically, this was brought to town meeting and it was, and that's why that money is still sitting in there. Okay. Scout Hall, question 2, is on its final stage of completion. Hope that should be completed, very soon. And hope we'll have the scouts back in there. Relative to Dwelly Farm, the CPC funds granted Dwelly Farm and invasive plant management. They granted 36,500 more in May of 2023. And obviously, it's just a continuing project which started back in 2019. So that's just a continual evolving. We are using FLEMA grants to fund one part-time position at the Senior Community Center. That's what that money was for. The ARPA spend plan, everybody got a copy of the ARPA spend plan. It's also online. That the select board did a fantastic spend plan. Was approved by the select board. In November, it shows the 5.5% expended. In December, it shows 33.47%. The town is proceeding forward with the spend plan as it's presented. The Green Communities Grant, 6, reassigned internally to our grant writer administrator. She is currently working with the MRPC to create spend plans for the final funds. Once we expend the roughly 21K, then we are eligible for the next round of disbursements. In reviewing the BvA of December, it does reflect ambulance personnel. Because again, the question was, it wasn't broken down to like the people and all the equipment, which in fact it is. But I after talking to Mr. Bennett, his concern is, the breakdown more so of the people like the EMTs and the on-call EMTs, the on-call firefighter EMTs that are getting paid potentially out of that fund as well, which is not broken down. It's only broken down to the, the active, the full-time paramedics that are on call, are on duty every day. Is that correct, Jeff? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Did I say that right? All right. So I will get with Adam concerning that part of it. I'll ask that question specifically for you, Jeff. Currently working on fiscal year 2025 budget with a priority to add additional funds to snow and ice, which that is happening. I don't believe we need a policy on the BvA when it gets released. As we discussed last meeting, we talked about like a policy between like the 10th or the 15th of the month. But after discussion, I understand why we don't have a policy on that. But again, the recommendation, I think going forward, it would not be a need at this point unless anybody disagrees. If you do, huh?
I do disagree.
Okay,
to a certain
excellent.
extent. I mean, it's borderline, but I think it really should be a policy.
Okay.
A set time policy.
Okay. I will send that forward.
And I tell Adam, I agree with all due respect. But I do feel it's a policy,
Understood.
not a day to day.
I will do that recommendation. We'll work on that recommendation as well, in writing, okay? Relative to police overtime, from Chief Bennett himself in response, considering court overtime and unscheduled overtime stayed exactly the same. Advised must be talking about the vacation backfill, police and dispatch. That line item saw an increase of 17,609, which includes multiple officers reaching years of service incentive in the CBA awarding an additional week of vacation. That also includes the vacation carryover and buyback. So that account will be larger. The account provided quarterly reports with the revenues expenditures. Please find attached, which I sent out. We do monthly expenditure reports. I will be happy to follow up with the accountants. Do not match up with what's being published. Signed, Adam Montaigne, Town Administrator. If anybody has any questions of that, we'll work on the recommendation piece for the policy. Yes.
Yes, yeah, as on policy stuff, number 9 question. He said, you don't believe we need a policy on when the BvA gets released.
Yes.
Again, page 23 of the town's financial management policy, it says the policy is the town accountant shall produce and distribute monthly budget to actual reporting. So that is a policy. The only thing that's not in there is
The date.
the time frame. And again, the March, I believe it was in March 2021, the second financial review.
Yep.
The DOR recommended a time frame for that report to come out every month. And that's a policy decision. That's the Board of Selectmen to make.
Yep. We're gonna do a recommendation.
Their policy.
Yeah, we're gonna recommend that to the
So
select board.
it's, like I said, that's not really a day-to-day thing. That's a policy.
Understood.
It's already in the financial management policy. That's approved and
It is.
changed and amended by the select board.
Okay, I will get that recommendation. We'll work on that together.
Yeah,
Don't
I'll
mind.
craft one.
Excellent. Action on the bylaw change. Jeff and I, we this is hold true and dear to at least my heart and Jeff's, because I worked on this a long time ago. And there was a little oversight. The action bylaw change to make motion of the town warrant voted to amend 9-6 of the bylaws to as follows. The advisory committee shall meet joint with the select board whenever there is a request to consider adjusting spending limits on any revolving fund and end of year financial transfers, period. Line out, or any request of transfer from the town reserve fund. So basically, what happens, well, we got caught last year a couple times because we have to meet with the advisory has to meet with the select board, where the select board has no authority. They just sit in the same room with us and look at us, whereas we vote to expend funds that the people already voted for us to manage and utilize and to spend as for emergency purposes, for unforeseen things over the course of the year. It's End of year spending, absolutely, 100%, we need to be together. Any type of financial transfers concerning like the budget stuff, absolutely, 100% needs to be together as a joint element between the advisory as well as a select board. Utilization of the reserve fund that we're responsible for, that the people voted for us to be responsible for, should be our responsibility and solely our responsibility. I mean, we should have to share room. Will the select board know that that transfer has to take place? Of course, they're gonna be notified. They have to be. It's part of the form. They have to be notified. But for them to sit in the room and have a special meeting just to move funds that we were already approved to handle and utilize made no sense to me. So that was why my recommendation for the change, and to do a warrant article to amend 9-6, just to line out or any other requests of transfer from the town's reserve fund that we're responsible to have. That was any comments on that?
I do.
Wait,
So
Jeff.
my thoughts on this is, first of
Yeah.
all, when you take money from the reserve fund
Mhm.
and transfer it to whatever fund you go to, you are affecting the budget. You are changing budget appropriations.
Yes.
It's allowed by state law. But, and in my experience from serving on this committee for a few years and having things arise when a question comes up and, okay, so we'll send that question out and then it'll come back. Okay, so we'll continue this to the next meeting. Having all of the people who are responsible for the budget, the administrator and the select board who create the budget, they vote on it, they present it to annual town meeting, and the advisory committee who recommends on the budget, who speaks on the budget. Having all of the players, if you will, at in one room, at one meeting at the same time to discuss budget changes, in my view, is not a waste of time. When this went to town meeting back in May of 2022, the recommendations for the advisory committee was 4-1. And the only dissenting vote was Cameron Forts, and he stated, and it's in the minutes of the meeting, April 28th, 2022, he was voting no because he had an issue with it's worded with respect to how the information would be given to the committee, how financial information would be given to the committee. Other than that, there was no issues raised by the select board. That's the only point that the advisory committee made, and it went to town meeting, and there was no opposition to it. It just passed.
Mhm.
Then, on June 1, there was going to be an advisory committee meeting. I believe this is the first reserve fund transfer after bylaw passed. It was posted meeting for action for a public works emergency fund transfer with no joint meeting. So I emailed the town administrator. And he said, well, I sent an email to the chair and vice chair of the advisory. Thanks for the notice. So that was taken off the agenda, and there was a joint meeting called June 28th, 2023.
Mhm.
And at 1 hour and 5 minutes into the meeting, when this came up, that's when that you made the statement that you thought it was a waste of time to have the joint meeting. Okay, that's fine. But then on September 20th, 2023, on the agenda is action for a reserve fund transfer request. It's not a joint meeting. The minutes reflect that it was discussed and voted on in violation of the town bylaw. There was a complaint, not by this resident, sent to the chair of the Board of Selectmen because of the lack of the joint meeting. There's a 1.5-page email from the chair of the select board responding to this issue, and basically it really doesn't defend why there wasn't a joint meeting held. Me personally, I don't know why the rules need to be changed. why can't the rules just simply be followed? Per town meeting vote? If people just continuously do not follow the rules and want to make statements, well, it wasn't violated and it's not, or you intentionally keep violating the bylaw by not following them, maybe people need to go instead of the rules being changed. I don't really see an issue with changing this rule that's going to benefit anybody, and I don't think having a joint meeting is an issue. It's not a problem. Again, all the budget people that present the budget, have to look at the budget, hopefully are looking at the monthly expenditure reports to see where the budget stands. Being in the same room to make adjustments to that same budget, it's not a waste of time, in my view. It's good practice.
Okay.
And there are other towns that do this,
Mhm.
that have joint meetings for the reserve fund transfer. Ashburnham is one of them. So if this goes in front of town meeting, I will be speaking against the change, and I will research the other communities. I have them that have joint meetings, because I think it's a good practice.
Listen, Jeff, I'm not saying can't have joint meetings. The joint meetings should happen with energy transfers. What I'm saying is the fact that we've already been voted, the people already voted to move money into the reserve fund. That that the advisory committee is responsible for, not the select board. They're not responsible for those monies. We are. I mean, ultimately, they are responsible for the entire budget. Don't get me wrong. And we have the oversight of that. But the people voted to have us responsible for that, $40,000-$50,000 in the reserve fund. So my concern is, we can have joint meetings. I mean, we can have meetings for meetings, because that's what we do. But to have a joint meeting, and I think those meetings you talked about in June, we just had that on the agenda and we left. Select board didn't say a word. Nobody said anything. I opened my meeting. We voted on moving the reserve funds. We closed the meeting and we left. And it was a time that, I mean, it was in June, I never forget it. And it was reserve funds usage. It wasn't like end of year transfer dollars. End of year transfer dollars, yes, they have to have that joint meeting. But I mean, being responsible for the dollars, to have another board or committee just to sit in is, I mean, what's their objective? I mean, it's just so they know. I mean, because they have no input.
They can have input. For instance, that one in June 28th, I believe, was for the culvert work down on Whitney Street.
It was.
That's a big thing. And again, it's affecting not only the amount of money left in the reserve fund, but it's increasing other departments'
Right.
budget appropriations.
But they're gonna know because of the documentation that's being passed forward, correct?
I just personally, I don't see the issue with it. As a matter, if there was an issue with this and it was a concern, why wasn't it brought when this was put in front of town meeting?
No, you're
It seems like it's after the fact when someone points out, hey, you have to have joint meetings. You just can't. Nobody's not gonna notice. People noticed, and now
Hold on,
it's an
Jeff.
issue.
Yes.
That's,
If this bylaw is changed and the advisory committee would still have to have a meeting to spend any money, right?
That's correct.
Is that open to the public?
It sure is.
So members of the select board could still come
Of course they can.
and
They're
they could
members of
still
the
have
community.
input?
They sure can.
Okay.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to put forward on the town warrant, a bylaw change to amend 9-6 of the bylaws. And again, to strike or any request of transfer from the town reserve fund.
I will move.
Okay, so
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion concerning this? I see none. Jeff?
no,
No?
Yes.
Andrew?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Okay, just a couple notes here for C and D. Action completed on the advisory committee budget. That budget was turned in. So with the change that we talked about, that Jeff, we moved it to 50,000, I believe, correct? So that change did go forward. Also action for the annual report that also was provided as well, to the select board office. Also, the third letter that went to the governor's office for the Main Street Bridge project for the request for the $3 million. That also went forward. I also sent a courtesy copy to John Slotnick's office, just so he knew that we were still trying to push that issue, because obviously we're trying to find ways in order to get that bridge up and running and back on track. We discussed action use of the town dollars on the ARPA funds and tax exclusions. Do you have any questions on that, Jeff? I know you talked about that a little bit, because I know I think they were using something for the Main Street Bridge, and you were like, what's happening with that and how's that's gonna work? Briefly, can you briefly discuss that?
Yes, originally the Main Street Bridge was going to be about estimated the cost of $2.25 million to a thing, and they were going to use ARPA funds for that.
Mhm.
Then we were getting an earmark from the state supposedly, or they were working on that. So ARPA funds were spent on other things. Some of it, I think there's an item in there for around 300,000, give or take, for bridge and drainage work.
Yep.
There's money in there for a couple of trucks. Some other things, 277,000 went to Narragansett School District.
Right.
So add that to our assessment. It's not a bad thing. I'm just saying and that money has already been gone and
They spent it.
is spent. It's
Yep.
part of the.
They did a great
committed.
job spending it.
So,
We did.
there is the spend plan there, and now we just have to watch those dollars because the time frame
Right.
is,
2026.
and it's not far away.
Nope, and
It
like,
comes up quick.
as long as the laws require that they have a spend plan in place, then those dollars will stay in place. That's what I'm being told. Okay,
And our biggest issue with that spend, that opera funding was, bonuses for town employees who came to work.
I know.
They locked in town hall and were deemed essential and they had to come to work. Imagine that. You're an essential employee, you have to come to work and you give them bonus. They didn't lose pension, they didn't lose hours, they didn't lose a job, they didn't lose a business, unlike town residents.
Understood.
I just, bad optics, and there's $100,000 for TCTV funding.
Understood. You're right. Action on the free cash breakdown monthly report. We've already discussed that. You're gonna help me with that, Jeff? Just send me like a draft.
I will look up, somewhere I believe the accountant and the auditor one year talked about a spreadsheet.
Right.
I'll work on that.
I mean, we need projections and we need full visibility so the people can have full visibility. We also talked about the action recommendation for snow and ice, breakdown monthly report, on the website. We already talked about that. Recommendation that pilot paid by Commonwealth allowed, full each year. Department of Public Safety and Capital Needs. Do you have something for that? No?
I don't have a written recommendation. It would be the Department of Public Service, not Public Safety.
Okay,
But if that could be held over until next month, and I'll have a written motion.
okay. Okay, that K is being crossed out. There's no need for that. I already did the governor's letter. I'm not doing that again.
Yep.
Recommendation on Templeton Municipal Light and Water. Select Board joint meet to discuss billing for water, electric, and possible pilot payments if in policy if necessary. I know you've been working on that.
Just as a note, that was also a recommendation from the DOR in the financial review I know the state law 164 allows the light to create bills and bill, but 164 is gas and electricity. It doesn't cover water, and it's an enterprise fund. And if people could come and work, pay it here while they're paying their sewer and their taxes and other things, it would be a convenience.
Right.
And I think it would work, but.
Okay, I got it. Do you have anything else to add on that, Noel, before we move on to M?
I just, I submitted at the last meeting items about
You did.
about the pilot.
Did you get a chance to look at those, Jeff? I know you didn't get them, Andrew. Well, can we make sure we get
Why don't
Andrew a
we,
copy?
why don't I make sure he gets a copy
Okay.
and then we'll defer that, until-
Next meeting,
Yeah, so everybody,
Yes.
I looked at all the numbers and stuff, but for him to get a chance to.
Yeah, I think he should have a chance.
Yeah, thank you.
So I would go with M2 as well. So M will be on their next meeting.
Yeah, they're related.
Recommendation to select board concerning the replacement of trucks and equipment for all departments. Obviously, we don't have a list, well, I have a list of some vehicles. Jeff, you sent me the ones on the fire department's trucks. I'm looking to build a list of all rolling stock that the town has with years and projections, and what those projections are. So if it's police cars every 3 or 5 years,
Yes.
what's the projection gonna be? And I wanna make like a
A matrix.
matrix, so
Yeah.
that way people can see like every piece of rolling stock the town has from police, fire, highway, anything that the town's responsible for, sewer, just so we can see what vehicles are there, and what projections do they have, moving forward.
For useful life, you mean?
Yes, useful life.
Yeah, there are, I actually went to the board, select board under public comment and mentioned and pointed out the fact that there are some towns that have just that, like you go on their front page, their web site. They got a web page and they have inventories of all vehicles by department.
Yep.
How old and the replacement cost. They have inventory of all town buildings and facilities and things. So again, so like I said, the residents can go and see, wow, we got all them vehicles.
Well, you
We
in
got all
service,
these fields
you
and
know
all
that
this.
we have those reports. We have hand receipts, we have reports for everything that we have. I'm not that I want to bring that to Templeton, but I think starting with the rolling stock, I think that would be a good start. And then we can move on from there.
Because to me, it's not only good business, but when you look at a budget and you go to town meeting and, we got all this money, this much money for, vehicles, this much money for the fields. Well, these are how many fields we have, and this is what goes on them. And to me, it just explains and gives the residents information, but when they go to town meeting to vote on spending their money, they get to see,
Right.
oh, man, all the trucks are that old? No wonder,
Yep.
at a replacement cost of them, so they get the picture.
Right. I think that's important. I think that people need it,
So,
we
that'd be-
talk about
that'd
transparency
be a
all the
good
time.
thought.
We talk about transparency all the time, so I think this is one of those most transparent things that we can potentially do. And obviously moving, I'm working on that, so hopefully I'll have some type of product by our next meeting. That we can all take a peek at.
Should help with budget forecasting as well.
Exactly, absolutely. M and O, don't worry about, that's being crossed off, because again, I did that somehow got back on the agenda, which it shouldn't have. Discussion regarding Worcester County Retirement Board, moving last catch-up payment from 2036 to 2040. Did you get a chance to get in that, when the next meeting was gonna be?
No,
But it wasn't-
they meet monthly.
Okay.
Yeah, I was planning to go to the March meeting.
The March meeting. I just want to see what their reaction is gonna be. Because I mean, you're looking at, that's almost a $500,000, $800,000 in savings.
Yeah.
On the figures that I did. Is that right? Am I on target?
It's 420,000 a year, like moving each year.
Okay. Okay, so I was on target.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so, but to get them to move it is probably gonna be nearly impossible, but again, it's an avenue. It's an avenue that this committee is trying to approach to find out, where every dollar we can save or spend for the services of the community. So we'll talk about that in March.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, discussion on current policies of the advisory committee. Now, obviously, Jeff and I, we've discussed this in great length. We do have policies from how we spend the dollars that we're in charge of. But and I grew up in the age where the policymakers is not an advisory committee. So my recommendation is to review review the policies that are in the town website right now concerning the advisory committee, to reformat these. Did you get a chance to look at those, Jeff?
Yes.
Okay, to reformat these into, credible, policies, in the formats that the town is required. And to recommend to put forward to the select board for their approval. Because I mean, they're the policymakers, not that we don't want to make our own way of doing business. I mean, we can, but I just think that that should be presented to the select board for their approval, because they're the policy signature holders. So we have one orientation of training for new members. We have the stabilization policy, fund policy. We also have the policy on reserve fund transfers. So those three, I think there was 4 policy, but those are the 3 that I was looking at to redo. And then obviously on the format that the select board's office wants for their policies, and then push it forward for the select board's review and authorization. Any questions or comments?
Well, my first thought is, now if you go with the reserve fund is the realm of the advisory committee and nobody else,
Mhm.
and you don't have to talk to the Board of Selectmen about it, then certainly you wouldn't ask the Board of Selectmen to approve your policy concerning the reserve fund, how it's requested and who has to be here and what paperwork you want filled out.
Mhm.
I mean, I know in the Association Town Finance Committee handbook, which is a handbook of this committee, because
Yep.
in Massachusetts, there's the finance, the advisory, the warrant advisory. It's all this supposedly the same thing. In there, they state that they recommend that a finance committee, advisory committee makes a policy as far as the reserve fund transfer, like the document that you want filled out and who fills it out and
Just step-by-step
yeah,
instructions.
and you record who signs it and that the person requesting it attends in case there's questions.
Understood.
So I will, again, I'm going off your argument that the Board of Selectmen has no say-so in it, so
Mhm.
why would we ask them to approve that policy in particular?
Okay.
And the same would be for how we do pre-town meeting and the policy on the checklist, or how we, conduct that. Again, there is a checklist for that item in the back of the Association Town Finance Committee handbook. And there is that book that's posted to the advisory committee's webpage on the town website.
It is on there, yeah.
Yeah, down the end.
Is that the new one?
I have to check. I know they just came out with a new select board handbook. That's all digital.
I think that's,
I'm not sure on the Association Town Finance Committee. I'll have to.
can you
look on
find
the-
out
my-
and just let me know,
check
just
on
send me a
that.
text.
I'll look.
Cause cause I looked at it, I didn't see the checklist in the back. I didn't probably go that
There,
far.
yeah,
Is it
they got a
an
bunch of.
appendix? Because that's what we use, because we don't even have a policy for
Yeah,
that.
no, this one here, Matt Ravad came up with,
Yeah,
but there's a few things that are already
outdated.
kind of, that have been changed,
Right.
the bylaw and stuff, but, and then there's some links on the advisory committee webpage
that you can-
that you click on when
Yep.
nothing is there. Was started by, the past chair, Lee Guthrie, and he was a computer, that's what he does.
Right,
He's a computer whiz.
wicked smart, yeah.
But he got off before that.
So there's nothing on there now?
So there's a lot of things that, you click on a link and it's like nothing there.
That's true.
Okay, so,
There wasn't a carryover from, personnel to personnel when they left.
okay,
I mean, it was a good thing to start and the committee we had voted on it. But then me and Mike Curry left and then he stayed another year and then he left, and
this is on the advisory
So
committee?
clean
yeah,
up the
this is the
website,
advisory
basically.
committee.
Yeah, it's on the advisory committee page on the Town of Templeton website. There are links that go to nothing.
Yeah, they
So,
would,
I don't know, is there
it
somebody?
was
in
started, but
that handles the
never,
IT
never,
stuff that
you know,
would kind of
completed
update
and
the
followed
rules for
through
us?
with.
Yeah, Holly, I guess, she's the one that manages the website, correct?
Yeah.
So I'll have
Yeah.
to check with Holly.
And at one time, there was a training course you could take.
Yeah.
A past chairman took it so you could post stuff to the advisory webpage. Specific things like that. But then again, that person left. And it's, you know, things were never picked up. And it's hard,
Oh, it is. I mean, it's like, remember back in the day, it's like the good idea theory comes out, sprinkles their dust and then comes up with all these great ideas, but nobody wants to do the work. And then when someone does half the work, but then leaves and then nobody picks up the ball.
And, you know, because either people don't know
Right.
how to do the stuff and you don't want to take, you know,
Understood.
it's a lot of work and time to
It is.
do it. But those things are just there and they're not. Like I said, they go to nothing, nothing is there.
Okay, I'll get with Holly tomorrow. Yeah, I'll get with Holly tomorrow. I'll get some of that rectified. Let's see. We'll move on to the discussion of the use of town vehicle policy. Mike Brad was working on that. He's actually, I believe, in Florida right now, sunning and swimming and doing all fun stuff. Oh my God, yeah, he sent me a picture of himself. I was so upset. So we'll break that up for the next meeting as well, because I know he was working on that.
Yeah,
And I
and
think it's
but
important.
some of those vehicle stuff is built into
Yeah, contracts.
an
Yep.
agreement, like the chief police, this, that.
Yep.
At one point, there was a point in time, the fire chief could take it home as long as he lived it was garaged in Templeton, like if you lived in town.
Right,
You lived out of town, you weren't supposed to, but those things have all changed. and,
right.
Um,
Well, I think once we see, I know Mike was working on, it, so once I see, right, some of the stuff is contractually based to vehicle usage, and some isn't. So we want to make sure that we have some type of policy that protects not
but
only
even
the,
still, then you could make recommendations to the board of selectmen when they renew those things, like, you know, the use of that vehicle to go back and forth, you know, to home, to work.
right,
You know, you don't want to see it at, you know, Walmart or grocery store, something,
Right.
you know, doing, yeah, I mean, it,
well, people ask me like, why are you guys talking about that? Why? Well, because that's money, because it's fuel, it's maintenance, it's wear and tear,
it's wear and tear on a
insurance.
vehicle.
I mean,
You know.
There's a lot of money factors that factor into town vehicles and
And it's a financial
It is.
benefit to whoever the employee
it
who
is,
has it,
right.
a big one.
It is. It also happens, like if you have X amount of vehicles that have blue plates on it, also increases
And
how much we pay in insurance.
Yep, I was gonna say in liability.
Yeah, and liability. So the more vehicles you have out there, the more liability insurance is gonna be. So,
see that when you see, if you see it, you know, oh yeah, he must be nice at the hardware store, at the grocery store. I mean, no, it's
Yeah,
just,
that's a.
that's what people see
Yeah, no,
and perception
you're right.
is reality.
perception is reality.
So-
Absolutely.
You know,
Well
it
said.
should be some guidance that, you
Absolutely.
know,
So hopefully I'll have more of that. Member comments. Jeff, just quickly.
I have nothing I think I've said enough. I have nothing.
I think you need a drink of water. I'm like, you must be parched.
There'll be something besides water.
I do appreciate your input, though. What do you got?
Actually,
Oh.
I'd like to thank Andrew for volunteering and stepping up. It's a lot of work. It's hard to get people. And it's hard to get them to stay. I bounced around back and forth. between
I'm only
a few,
appointed to March, so, or May, excuse
May.
me, so May.
Tell me.
but- Oh, even no, but I mean, well, that's me right now too.
Right.
I'm committed until May.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens, but it's an important committee. It's required to exist by law.
Right.
And we need members to do our job, to do the job that we're supposed to do and that's make recommendations to the town meeting to give them an idea of what's in front of them and what's what and what's up. And that's why it's important. So thank you for stepping up. Even if you're only here till May, it's an important thing.
We'll
It
see.
is.
Thank you, Jeff.
Appreciate it. What do you got?
I want to say the same thing. I welcome you as well. I have no further. comment.
Excellent.
Thank you
Andrew?
very much. Well, thank you very much, everybody. This was fun. And I don't know if
I brought some magic, but hour and 45 minutes. It's like almost 2.5 hours last month, so we're on the right track.
We are, we try to get the information out. We, obviously, some of us have to do some homework. Thanks, Jeff, for doing some work at home. I appreciate the input. Same with you, Noel. You'll get homework soon enough. Because some of the work that we have to do, we do in, like, not independently, we do, then we bring it back.
Yeah, of course.
To see how, because I can't, we all, individually, we all just can't do everything ourselves. I mean, when Jeff was the chair, I mean, I think he slept here, because, and then when I was the chair, I mean, I slept here. I mean, it was, when I was chair of the select board, and so I learned from that. So being here as the chair, I divvy out as much as I can. I still take some responsibility, but I divvy out as much as I can. I do want to give thanks to, again, to all the employees of the town. Again, they do the king's business every single day for the people in this town, from fire, police, highway, the people that work in this building. They do a tremendous job, as we heard from like Justice today, from the assessor's office and Luann. They do a tremendous job working hand in hand with the treasurer collector, the accountants, and everybody else in this building that does a tremendous job every single day. And, they don't get enough credit as far as I'm concerned. So hats off to you. Again, I would entertain at this time a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
A motion second. Any other further discussion? I see none. Jeff?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Andrew?
Yes.